Black Hills Information Security, the leaders in penetration testing and active defense. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to request a quote today. Threat Connect is the industry's most widely adopted threat intelligence platform, built to unite the people, processes, and technologies across your security team, your organization, and your entire ecosystem of partners. Threat Connect's threat intelligence platform enables your team to collaborate, analyze, and make sense of threat data all in one place. Empower your team towards fast and efficient analysis that leads to decisive action. Transform your entire threat detection and response program today. Claim your free account at threatconnect.com/securityweekly. Overwhelmed when it comes time to choose which cigar to smoke? Confused by the differences between 60 ring gauge, Robusto, Corona, and Lancero? Do you yearn to try all the new cigars on the market, but need a guide to tell you where to start? Look no further than the Stogie Geek Show. Hosted by yours truly and Will Cooper, we've made it our mission to educate both new and experienced cigar smokers. Tune in for interviews with leaders in the cigar industry, how-to segments, and weekly cigar reviews. Visit StogieGeeks.com to subscribe to our podcast, watch the live show, and discover our video archives. Stogie Geeks, geeks kicking ash. Welcome back, everyone, to Security Weekly. This is our listener feedback segment for this week. Rolling your own crypto. That's right. That's the title of this one. An anonymous listener has written in and says, I'm working for a company that's interested in encrypting fields in its database and have given me the assignment. We work with PHP, C#, and JavaScript because we have a website clients can access. So I have the option of writing encryption key storage in PHP, and I've been looking at PBKDF2 and OpenSSL for that. First of all, thumbs up for the PBKDF2.
Yep.
MySQL is ruled out for insecure encryption. I was reading MySQL does have built-in encryption functions, and then you can find where people are like, no, don't use those. So props there. Another thumbs up for that. But I've also heard don't write your own crypto because I may, despite my best efforts, put in exploits in the code. What can I do to keep my company secure? I know the company wants to host all our own code, for example, downloading jQuery rather than linking to it.
Good.
Does that make a difference? Throwing it out there to the illustrious panel. So let's start with the first question. What can he do to keep his company secure? Sounds like he's on the right track already.
Yeah, by asking the damn questions.
Yes,
right? I mean,
yes.
Yeah,
having
exactly.
a concern, right?
Yeah,
I'm
here's
sorry.
the key, though, too. When you ask those questions, and that's good, think through then how to go explain it to somebody else. Because if you're a non-technical person who just listened to that intro, you went, wait, what? So when you start getting spun up in that and you go deep into the weeds, remember to come back a little bit and go, okay, how will I explain this to somebody else in the organization that maybe understands technology but doesn't have this background? So when I say to them, look, these other folks are saying I really shouldn't do this by myself, you need to be able to explain to them why in a cogent and quick way that they go, oh, okay, good. Yeah, I got it.
Yep, I understand. Yeah, and it's too bad Mr. Mann wasn't here because
Yes.
Jeff had some.
It's definitely his area, yeah.
Jeff had some great comments via email with the gentleman or woman. I honestly don't know. But he had some great comments.
And the cool part is that Jeff would have mentioned PCI, and we would have all had to drink as well.
No.
Now you mentioned it, so
Oh, drink. Yeah.
So
yeah.
the whole thing, don't write your own crypto, right? And I think we've talked about that on the show before. We know it's a no-no. Don't try and do it. But
math is hard.
let's take security all the way back to like good coding practices.
Yeah.
And I think it was Apollo that was telling me, stories when he's done some consulting. And it's not security related directly, but he's like, they're having this issue and they bring me in to fix it. And I look at the code and they've written like all this thousands and thousands of lines of code. And he's like, that's great. And that's probably your problem. But I'm going to replace that 1,500 lines of code, and I'm going to put 3 lines of code right here, and I'm going to use a library to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to call this publicly available library function. And
Yes.
it's been vetted by some portion of the community for significant periods of time.
probably better than what you could. I mean, sometimes you could come up with something, and
Sure.
but that's probably not your objective, right? Like, these are stepping stones to get to your objective.
Yep.
And if you're writing every stepping stone from scratch, if we take that to its most extreme form, well, I'm going to write my own operating system. I'm going to write my own kernel first, and then I'm going to run my application on top.
Yeah.
So
that's just it.
You have to draw the line somewhere, and I
Right.
think that the general advice that I think goes along with this question is, don't reinvent the wheel, and that goes for a lot of things, good coding practices and security, is to find the libraries and functions that are standard. And when we talk about encryption, and specifically PHP, PBKDF2 is definitely the way to go. I did like a little research project when I was looking in when there was a vulnerability, and was enlightened by some of the recommendations out there for that. So there's definitely standard libraries to encrypt. I think the built-in encryption in MySQL has come under suspect, and I'm not exactly sure why, but I know it's like general rule of thumb, like, don't use it. So I would look into other libraries inside of your application, and I think unless anyone else opposes this idea, right, maybe encrypt it in your application before it goes into the database, and don't so much rely on the database to do the encryption. Now, performance-wise, I'm not an application architect by any stretch of the imagination.
That's good, but then that begs the question. Is actually the wrong way. That's a misused phrase. But it means then that you have to have somewhat level of understanding of how your application works.
Yes.
So that's good, right? Because you're removing it from the database. But if the application is not coded appropriately and/or has what we commonly see, right, hard-coded passwords and other type of stuff, you might actually just be moving the problem down the path. One of the things Jeff did point out in the email that I think is worth mentioning is that when you look at a system like this, right, crypto is a perfect example. Passwords are the same. There's what you choose, there's how you implement it, and there's how you operate it. So what we're talking about right now are which libraries should you use, where should you house them, how should you architect it. But then you need to implement it appropriately, and there may be certain configurations that are appropriate for your environment. You need to look at that. But then there's also how do you operate it. And that's how do you select the keys, how do you distribute the keys, how do you manage the keys, how do you protect the keys. The thing I've always liked about crypto is that when you look at something that's public, good crypto should stand up to that scrutiny. So if the algorithm is public, what you're relying on is the strength of the key and your ability to protect that key. That's great, because it means that it's kind of like we used to ask people, we still ask them, is DES broken? Most people go, oh yeah. No, it's not broken. Turns out 56-bit key, not good. But the algorithm itself, you can't break it based on the algorithm. You're just going to brute force that key
because of the
in a
key
very short period of time. That's exactly right. It's too small. So the thing to it is, when you're looking at these types of things, remember, there's what you can select, and because somebody else already built it, what's good about public is it's validated, but then you got to think about how it's architected, Paul, which is where you were going with it. But then you got to think too about how you're going to implement it. So how are you going to generate those keys? How are you going to distribute those keys? How are you going to manage those keys? And that factors into it. And that's why we typically suggest don't roll your own. There's too much here to go wrong.
So, Michael, I'd want to draw a little bit of a parallel to one of the things that I've considered an expert in, I guess, is the wireless stuff. When we think of WEP and how much of a failure that was, and that there was some realization that WEP is broken and we need a Band-Aid to fix it, so we had WPA and ultimately WPA2, and WPA came out first, WPA2 came out later, and WPA was intended to be a Band-Aid over WEP, and it was intended to have a 5-year replacement lifespan. To 5 years afterwards, it was going to be replaced with WPA2 because they wanted that 5 years to develop a new encryption model based on largely open standards and figure out how you're going to do key distribution and all of those things you just talked about, and put it in front of folks to vet for 5 years before it was even to the point where folks are going to be implementing it.
Yeah, okay. So that sounds
commendable.
Good. Did it work that way?
Yeah.
It did, actually.
All right, it's good then. All right, then I like it.
The problem, the problem is that people are still using WPA.
That's
right. We didn't deprecate it very effectively.
Right. Nope. They're still using WPA TKIP. But, the issue is, and the core of the issue with crypto always is in key distribution. It's not about the algorithms. If you look at a good symmetric key block-based encryption algorithm, they're solid.
Yeah, it's sexy, Jeff.
They're solid. They're well-founded. They're well-studied.
Yeah.
where people run afoul invariably, and it goes from wireless all the way to everything else, is how are we going to distribute keys effectively, and how are we going to rotate them effectively?
Yep, and I would argue also, Joff, key selection.
Yeah, exactly. Key selection.
Yeah, I keep in mind too. You guys are pointing out something that I watch people get tripped up a lot. There's symmetric algorithms as asymmetric, and I'll see people cite an asymmetric algorithm with some absurd key size and tell me that they're going to encrypt a whole drive with that, and you just laugh because it doesn't work that way.
But you forgot one.
I did.
Symmetric A?
Yeah, the Canadian encryption.
I knew exactly where he was going on that one.
So invariably, where I've seen things go wrong and where I've literally found 0 days is the fact that key distribution, key rotation is broken.
Yeah,
Completely.
And that's where it falls down, and that is the biggest challenge. But there are standards out there for key management. There are standards out there for key distribution. There are ways to do it. So do your reading, do your homework.
Yeah, they're not new problems, right?
Yeah.
The good news about this is it's not new, but that doesn't make it easy, right? Just because somebody else figured it out, you still have some opportunity here. And that's where I'm going to kick in from the communication side is you're going to have to explain to other people why. Because they go, can't you just send it to me by email? And you're going to have, and you can't look at them and scoff and go, no, dummy. You have to explain to them why. And you need to be prepared to go to the whiteboard. Well, yeah, if you did, you'd be like everybody else in security. So this is your opportunity to not be like everybody else.
And the whole discussion illustrates why what Diffie-Hellman did with key exchange and public-private key cryptography was so revolutionary.
It was really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it was revolutionary because it solved that problem of key distribution, which is a huge issue. Unfortunately, people are still kind of not redoing their reading and doing it wrong, right? So, but the algorithms themselves, like you look at, again, you go back to the advanced encryption standard with these block size and key lengths that are 128-bit, 256-bit. They're very, very solid. They're great algorithms. They work. They work to the point where, our authorities are getting all pissed off, and that's a whole other discussion.
Well, but stay on that, though, because, Larry brought this up talking about the wireless stuff. I mean, you look at AES, that was a multi-year competition. It was a global competition, and they basically said, hey, we'll open it up. And it was actually, right, they took Rheindahl, and so Rheindahl implemented appropriately becomes AES, and it has a limited number of rounds, but you can choose the key length, you can choose the number of rounds. I mean, when you look at that, it's elegant, and the math on it's good, and that stood up to the best of the cryptographers and the best of the mathematicians that we have around the world.
Right, the voodoo magic in the algorithm, which has always been interesting to me, is the S-box selection, but we get down to some very deep math and we talk about that, and we don't.
I thought he was doing that on purpose. He's stuck in an endless loop.
He's generating his key.
Yeah, type it on the keyboard, giving it randomness to generate the key.
Oh shit!
Joff, are you still there, or are you all right? Did you have a seizure? It sounded like you were stuck.
My
shit! Here it goes again.
My Scarlett 212 is having some buffering issues. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that happens. You got to unplug it, plug it back in.
That's what I just did. Yeah.
Amazing technology that we use here for audio.
Plug it back.
The answer is always
reboot. Did you turn it off and turn it back on again?
That's exactly what we have to do.
That's exactly what I just did.
Before we get too far down the rabbit hole on this one, I want to, I've seen Not Kevin smirk a couple of times and that type of stuff. So I really want
that's because that's what he does.
Well, I want him to be able to weigh in on this. So shut the hell up and let Kevin talk.
Well, yeah, no. I appreciate that, Larry, and this has been a really good conversation, so I feel like it's a good way to kind of round it out and end this segment, which is, from what I've taken away from all of your opinions about this, is that you should absolutely roll your own crypto.
Yes. Summed up nicely.
Don't even do it sober. Start drunk.
That's right.
Roll your own crypto and then put a WAF in front of it, and you're good. You're fine.
You understand us, okay?
So you can write into the show to get expert advice like Not Kevin.
So you've seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, right? That's the state of mind you need to be in when you start writing your own crypto.
So you can write into the show, psw@securityweekly.com, ask a question and get expert advice such as roll your own crypto and put it behind the WAF. We're here for you, listeners. We're here for you.
Saying.
Yes.
And actually throw in a little bit of IDS and snort and bro and shit on top of that. And oh
Throw
my God.
some shit on top of it. That's what we're saying.
We have baked a cake, by God.
You know what? And now you're going to get our expert opinion on the security news coming up next.
Oh, I wanted to comment one more quick comment on the hosting your own code thing.
20 seconds.
And about hosting your own jQuery and that type of stuff. Fantastic idea.
Yes.
You don't,
Good job there, dude.
Don't put that
Yeah.
somewhere else. Yeah.
So more things like that where we can say, yep, that's a good idea, and move on to the next segment.
Yep.
And with that, we're going to take a short break, come back, and talk about the security news for this week.
Oh, baby.